This right here on the table in front of me is the anti-gravity A1. And anti-gravity was actually incubated by a company you probably know about. Insta360, possibly the most famous 360-degree camera manufacturer out there, which is why I was so excited when they asked me if I wanted to check out and review the anti-gravity A1. Let's get right into this box. So this thing retails for about $1,500, or where I am in Poland, 7,400 zloty. And Anti-Gravity have very kindly actually sent over an entire bundle. The drone plus its accessories, so we get the best experience possible. Inside the main box, not only do you get the drone, but you've also got a carry bag. This is actually the drone. It is so unbelievably tiny. I am very surprised. Folded up, it's just 141 by 96 by 81 millimeters. This thing could genuinely fit inside a pocket, and actually lightweight enough to go through most regulations without needing a license. It's just 249 grams folded up with the battery. That's basically a large chocolate bar. And then in here is the part that makes this drone specifically exciting for our channel. These are the FPV goggles, and they're not your normal average FPV goggles. These actually have two Micro-OLED panels in them. But let's not get too ahead of ourselves. More on that in a little bit. The goggles themselves are actually heavier than the drone, as they're 340 grams. Now, onto the batteries. You get 3 batteries in the box. They give you about 24 minutes of flight time per battery, which is fairly average for a drone nowadays, even though every time I find myself looking for more. And each one of these charges in about 45 minutes inside the charging hub. That charging hub actually charges all of your batteries sequentially, making sure it's not splitting the charge between the batteries. The hub itself connects via Type-C, making it basically universally accepted. And then finally, we've got a controller that is quite different to anything I've used before. And it's actually used by pressing the trigger and tilting the controller in the direction you want the drone to fly. It looks very simple, but if it works and is intuitive, you don't need more, considering the fact you will not be looking down on a phone. Finally, inside the carry case, right back here, you actually have 8 spare propellers, a little screwdriver to install and remove the propellers, a battery lanyard, a micro SD card reader, a Type-C cable, and prescription lens adapters. But we're not done quite yet, as Anti-Gravity have also sent over their landing pad. And all of a sudden, it's quite a bit easier for the drone to find out where it's supposed to land, take off, and also you don't have to worry about it getting wet, as it is not waterproof. Now it's worth mentioning, you do not need this in order for the drone to return to home, land, or start. Also in the box, we've got replacement lens kits, which is not something I've seen on a drone before, but considering it is a 360 drone, if you scratch one of those, you've got a problem. So that is everything inside our boxes. Let's clean this place up and set the drone up. Okay, so I've had quite a bit of time with this drone at this point. So first, let's take a look at these goggles, because I really think that these are one of the drone's standout features. As I mentioned before, these have Micro-OLED panels in them, running 2560 by 2560 per eye. The panels themselves run at 72 Hz, so comparable to a Quest 1. But these have pancake lenses, meaning you get crisp and clear visuals. You've got a physical dial for IPD adjustment, as well as diopter adjustment. Now, do keep in mind, the diopter adjustment on these goggles only runs from +2 to -5. So if you're outside that range, you'll still have to get corrective lenses of some sort. The FOV here is wider than the FOV on the DJI Goggles 1 and 2, even though they are not as wide FOV as a VR headset, so you can still see the edges, especially if you don't turn on immersive mode. But when you do turn on immersive mode in the settings, these goggles really feel like you are just floating in the air. The menu navigation inside these is absolutely brilliant. I could jump right in and find everything exactly where I thought it would be, which is very nice considering this is Anti-Gravity's first drone. You use the motion controller in order to point a little pointer exactly where you want to go, and then you just press the trigger in order to select a menu item. If I did have to have a gripe with the controller though, it's that the menu button buttons can feel a little unintuitive, as they are placed in very weird places and could be more difficult to reach for people with smaller hands. But for myself, with I would say average-sized hands, they became quite intuitive just after a while. And one of the most unique parts of this headset is the outside display, on which, when you're flying, by default, it will show exactly what you're seeing in the glasses, meaning that spectators around you get to see exactly what you're seeing. Absolutely brilliant move there, and yes, it is somewhat a party trick in the free motion mode, because you're constantly moving your head around in order to fly the drone, but in FPV mode, where you're sitting stable and looking forward, it's quite a nice window into exactly what you're seeing from people around you. Talking about watching things, you also get a pass-through camera. Now, it's not stereoscopic, so the experience is very weird here. I would say this is the kind of pass-through camera that you use only when you absolutely need to. It's nice that it's there, however, my sense of space wasn't quite right in it, and I would consider myself to be a VR veteran of sorts. Now, let's go back to that external display, because I think it's such a cool feature, it deserves a part of its own in this video. As I mentioned before, it mirrors exactly what you're seeing live, unless you don't want it to, as you also get the feature to display some custom animations on it. There's currently not a way to import your own custom animations onto this, but you can select from the list that Anti-Gravity has given us. Also worth mentioning, you can record the screen inside the goggles to an SD card or to the 30 gigabytes of onboard storage. And you can also watch back your 8K 30 FPS 360 video right there in the goggles. You do not need to download the files to your phone or your computer, which is very nice because you also get the immersive viewer of being able to look around right there. You don't need like a spare VR headset or anything. Mind you, transporting these files to a VR headset as a 360 file is incredibly simple. Just throw them into the Anti-Gravity software, render them as a 360 file, and copy them over to your VR headset. They just work. The virtual cockpit is also a pretty funky feature inside the goggles, where you can fly a dragon, let's say, if that's something you want to do. Just a fun little addition that, again, I'm fairly certain you'll only find on this drone. And finally, the flight simulator. It's a feature inside the goggles that actually allows you to learn flying the drone before you go in and actually fly it. I was really scared of flying this at the beginning, so I went into the simulator and learned everything from there. It actually translated into the real world very, very well. Now, let's move on to the flight, because this is something a lot of people actually interested in drones are going to be looking at. It's super smooth, and this drone has very good wind resistance. Even on a very windy day, this thing flew without a hitch, which is unbelievable considering it's so tiny and so light. A pretty big caveat though, or not so much once you get used to it, is the fact that you cannot fly back on this drone. Anti-Gravity is utilizing the fact that this is a 360 drone, so in FPV mode, you would just tilt the controller left or right to turn around, and in free motion mode, you would quite literally just turn your head around and press the trigger, and the drone would start flying in that direction. Now let's move on to some of the smart features. We've got Sky Genie, which allows you to, in one tap, have 8 cinematic maneuvers execute automatically. You've got Arc Shot, Spiral Ascent, Oval Orbit, and quite a few more. Then, of course, we've got Deep Track, that allows you to select a subject, and the Anti-Gravity A1 will automatically track it. Quite a default feature on drones nowadays, but I do have to mention that the Anti-Gravity does this very well. I've had it track me even as I went behind trees, and continue tracking after that, without any problems. Then we've got SkyPath, which is designed to save waypoint flight routes. Once set, the drone flies autonomously, which means you can hand the goggles to a friend while it's flying itself. It's also quite powerful and useful if you want repeatable paths, let's say at sunset and at sunrise. Then we've got Return to Home, which this drone does so well. And let me explain what I mean by that. With this drone, we got a landing mat. It turns out that this drone, if you have that landing mat in place, not only will it return to home using GPS coordinates, but it will also use camera tracking in order to find the mat and land directly on it, which is a pretty big deal because I've had landing mats for other drones and have had them miss it. Now, let's talk a little bit about the spring spring update, which is coming up very soon. First of all, we've got omnidirectional obstacle avoidance. Pretty big deal, as currently the drone can only see obstacles in front of it. With the new update, not only will it be able to sense obstacles all the way around it, but it will also be able to actively avoid them, meaning that if you're flying forward and there's a tree in front of you, it will autonomously avoid it. We're also apparently getting voice commands, very useful if you want hands-free triggers for things like Sky Genie, Deep Track, Skypath, and Return to Home. Huge for solo pilots who don't want to juggle the controller mid-shot. Time-lapse photography will now be supported in both normal recording and Skypath modes. Each waypoint can have its own camera angle. The drone will transition between them automatically mid-flight. Pretty cool. Now let's talk about the camera footage. As for a sub 250 gram 360 drone, it's brilliant. Your headliner mode is going to be 8K at 30 FPS, but you also get 5.2K at 60 FPS and 4K at 100 FPS. That 8K 30 is going to be enough for most people, including me. And in case you want a little bit more out of the photos that you take, you can actually take them in INSP and RAW, meaning that you get the standard anti-gravity pictures as well as RAW images to spice them up later on in post-processing. Pro mode also exists, in case you want to change the ISO, shutter speed, and EV. It's all accessible right there from inside the goggles and quick menu. Very intuitive and simple to find. You'll want it in the bright sun, as auto exposure can clip your highlights. But the live highlight clipping overlay that you can also turn on shows exactly where you're losing detail, so you can adjust it in real time before it happens. That is incredibly useful. Now onto some of the hardware limitations that are worth knowing about. First of all, it's 8-bit only. You don't get 10-bit or log recording. The A1 uses a sensor optimized for compact 360-degree capture, not cinema-grade color science. It means that if you live in log, this drone is probably not for you. There's also no native 16:9 recording. Everything shoots in 360 and then you have to adjust in post. Some people love that workflow, some people don't. It is also worth mentioning that currently the only way to fly this drone is with the goggles. However, multiple creators have been told that Anti-Gravity is working on a controller that will not require the goggles. Now, onto charging and battery. The 3-battery hub supports quick charge, and I can confirm that the rated 24 minutes on a single standard battery is accurate. And on the nice days that we've had here, I've actually managed to fly just past that, which is very impressive for something this small. So what's the verdict here? Well, the price is absolutely real. $1,600 for the standard, and up to $2,000 for the Infinity bundle. But here's the thing, the Vision goggles alone are actually doing a lot of the heavy lifting on that price tag. You're getting dual 1-inch Micro-OLED panels, pancake lenses, a 200-inch equivalent screen, head tracking, built-in diopter adjustment, 30 gigabytes of onboard storage, an external display, and a flight simulator. As well as a nice addition, you can actually watch movies inside these goggles. And all that in a 340-gram headset. Comparable standalone Micro-OLED headsets with pancake optics easily run $500 to $700 on their own. And the drone, the grip controller, 3 batteries, the hub, the bag, as well as the app and the workflow on top of all of that, and suddenly that number starts to make a lot more sense. You're essentially paying for how well all of this works together, and the software magic behind it. And the accessibility story is not just a marketing copy. I've actually given this drone to 2 strangers that I met just completely randomly and asked them to see if they can fly it. One of them had flown drones before. One of them was literally having their first day with their drone, and I actually also gave it to my girlfriend, who had never flown any kind of drone before. And they all flew. Immediately. That almost never happens, and it's directly because of how well the goggles and the grip controller work together. Point where you want to go, pull the trigger, and you're flying. The learning curve that usually keeps people away from FPV simply doesn't exist here with this 360 drone. The software pipeline is active and meaningful. Real features, not just patch notes. The 8-bit and no-log ceiling is all hardware though. Accept it, or go buy something else. Everything on top of that is improving incredibly fast. I think this drone is absolutely brilliant for travel creators, vloggers, or anyone who wants every angle from a single flight without the steep learning curve. This is a full drone system that actually fits in a normal bag. Or actually, this one's so tiny, it might even fit in your pocket. Thank you so much to Anti-Gravity for sending this drone over. It's been an absolutely incredible time testing this. I cannot wait to compare it for you guys to the Avata 360. Links for the anti-gravity A1 will of course be down below, and now is probably the best time to check it out, as anti-gravity is running a massive spring sale, up to 20% off, where you can save up to $400. And with the link in the description, you also get a free anti-gravity landing pad as a gift. So in case you're interested, check them out. And if you like this one, please leave a like. If you disliked it, I guess this button works too, but let me know why down below. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you have an amazing day. Thank you so much to the Patreons and the members supporting this channel. You guys are incredible. Seriously, much love. You help me continue creating content like this. And as usual, if you want to be notified about future content coming up on the channel, make sure to smack that subscribe button with your forehead, ding my bell, and see you again in the next video. Peace.